the biggest fear is when you're alone, and there are no police. Zoran Mamdani is against more police in the subway. If you're in danger, his solution as mayor would be for you to call the Behavioral Health Emergency Assistance Response Division. Whatever that is. Nice isn't what we need in a mayor.
Another smiling photo of Zoran Mamdani, taken just a few days ago. And who's he with this time? Imam Siraj Wahaj, an unindicted co-conspirator in the 1993 World Trade Center bombing, who called for a jihad on New York City, and someone who condemned gay people as, quote, cursed with a disease. This is who Zoran Mamdani embraces. He's not who you think he is. Paid for by 4R City.
That is one of the many ads that is currently being run across New York City airwaves in the lead up to the election, which, by the way, this video is hopefully timed correctly to release on Tuesday morning of Election Day in the city of New York. And by the way, important elections in Virginia, in the state of New Jersey, and of course, there's Prop 50 on the ballot in the state of California that you guys all need to vote in if you actually live in those respective states. But as we can see, we finally are getting attacks on Mamdani. These attacks appear to finally be somewhat effective, but the thing is, the question that everybody has is whether or not it just happens to be too late for these attacks to be effective, and of course, will Cuomo and Sliwa split the non-Mamdani vote to the point where Mamdani is handed the mayorship of the city of New York? And this is what we're going to talk about today, because it is election day. You should definitely 100% go out and vote, and the polling seems to indicate that the race is tightening. We also have very much increased turnout in the city of New York, so maybe the older representation in the voting electorate will flip the script on Mamdani, and everything needs to be broken down, so that's what we're going to do today. But before we do, I want to thank everybody who supports this channel via actualjusticewarrior.com/join.
Give me the money. Give me the money, okay?
Running New York is the second toughest job in America, yet Zoran Mamdani has only managed a staff of 5 and skipped half of all votes. He spends his time tweeting radically dangerous ideas. Defund the police. Dismantle SWAT teams. Free buses? Been tried. Overrun by the homeless and crime. Sit this one out at your own peril. Experience matters. Cuomo. Paid for by Fix the City.
So one of the things that I've noticed as of late, and again, this is not just on Twitter.com, but it's actually on the television stations, is that the ads against Mamdani are finally actually good. They finally highlight his defund the police agenda, all the different various horrible things that he said and done, the fact that he's lazy, doesn't even show up to vote in his current position at the state assembly, and of course, that he's accomplished nothing in his career. Now, of course, my favorite part of that ad was when they threw in the extreme weather right in the middle of it, as if, you know, Mamdani is going to make the heavens seek vengeance on the city of New York if he's elected. But in reality, this is the kind of stuff that Governor Cuomo's team should have been doing to Mamdani since the primary. But the thing is, the guy has basically not campaigned against Mamdani until after early voting started, which is actually a legitimate embarrassment. Remember, Andrew Cuomo and his father, Mario Cuomo, the Cuomo family, have been an institution in New York statewide politics for decades and decades and decades. And you would think that they would have something better than an 11th hour push that's actually finally legitimate. But apparently they decided this whole campaign that they weren't going to campaign against this guy. And Mamdani has been allowed to go unchallenged essentially up until late October of 2025 during his mayoral campaign. And it's an absolute embarrassment. Now, of course, we have indications from the polls that Mamdani's lead is narrowing significantly. We have Atlas Intel, which is one of the most accurate pollsters in the entire country. They were the most accurate in 2024, in 2020, and again in 2016. And they have indicated that the race is actually much closer than other polling institutions are saying it is.
A new Atlas poll, which surveyed over 1,500 people through October 30th, shows Mamdani at 40, former Governor Andrew Cuomo at 34, and Republican candidate Curtis Sliwa at 24.
Now look, a lot of people look at that and they think, well, well, it's still 6 points to the advantage of Mamdani, so he's definitely a lock to win. And if you check the betting odds for Mamdani, you could see he's in and around 88 to 95% chance of being the next New York City mayor. And this is because overall, the polling shows him with a significant lead that is beyond the margin of error. And this is in fact true. It's 100% accurate. And in reality, very likely today, Tuesday, November 4th, 2025, Zoran Mamdani will in fact be the winner of the New York City mayoral election. However, there are other things in the data that give a little bit of hope, a little bit of a chance of that not being the case. And that is the fact that currently, right now, early voting has basically outpaced Mayor Adams' total vote total back in 2021, indicating that the polling of likely voters might actually be completely inaccurate.
Hey, Craig, we really saw record numbers of voters come out to do early voting. 9 days of early voting wrapped up just yesterday, and now all three candidates making their final push to get the word out, to get voters to the polls on the last day possible, which is Tuesday, Election Day. The numbers show New Yorkers are turning out to voice their choice for New York City's 111th mayor. After 9 days of early voting, more than 735,000 people cast their ballot. That's more than 4 times the last mayoral race, according to the New York City Board of Elections. The three candidates zigzagging the 5 boroughs to make their last-minute push.
So that around 750,000 number that you see for the early voting totals, a lot of people on the left are attributing that to the energy behind Zoran Mamdani, and they're claiming that this is going to equal a majority of support for him, over 51% of votes cast in his favor. However, based on some of the data that we've seen, there's been a lot of senior citizens that are showing up to vote, and older people are definitely more in the camp of Andrew Cuomo. In fact, when I went out to vote in the early voting process in and around my neighborhood, which by the way, I ended up visiting 2 polling stations because I took somebody else to vote against Zoran Mamdani as well. I did my part, guys. You guys got to go out and do yours. I ended up seeing that there was a whole host of elderly people at these different various locations, but in reality, that is just 2 polling sites on 1 day of early voting. So even though it seems like it would be demographically more of a Cuomo or Sliwa support, which by the way, Sliwa support would actually end up helping Mamdani, so maybe that's not a good thing either. It doesn't necessarily mean that that trumps the overall data. But interestingly enough, Mamdani's campaign seems to be a little bit desperate. They seem to be in a panic. They don't seem to believe that this is 100% locked in because they're still going extremely hard. And a lot of people are mistaking the fact that he's releasing ads in foreign languages as a sign of weakness. But again, this does play to his advantage. People have pointed out that he recently dropped an Arabic ad, and while that might not be something that is standard and normal in an election that you would vote in your part of the country, New York City has actually increased its Islamic population ridiculously so, to the point where we have, I believe, in and around 1 million Muslim New Yorkers in this particular city. Now, what percentage of them vote, that's a whole separate issue, but obviously Mamdani is trying to corner all of these different demographics, and the fact that he speaks multiple languages, or at least competently speaks them enough that he could talk in the political ads in those multiple languages, is in fact an advantage for him. But again, the Cuomo ad team is finally stepping up. They're finally doing something, and it seems like that the race is tightening because guess what? When you actually attack your opponent on policy related to New York City, rather than whether or not they support the nation of Israel, things tend to progress. Things tend to get better.
America deserved 9/11, dude.
That's Zoran's buddy, Hassan Piker, saying we deserve 9/11. It's a disgrace to every life lost. Zoran went on Piker's show, and now Piker was just spotted at Zoran's event. Mamdani is wrong for New York. Paid for by 4R City.
Now look, I know a lot of people are saying to themselves, who cares if New York City goes communist? It's not a big deal. Sean, you should move out of that city anyway. But this will be a great example for the left wing to show them that socialism absolutely doesn't work. But the thing is, we've had examples of socialist failures for over 100 years worldwide that we could look to indicate that this doesn't work. They never stick. And part of the reason why socialism still hangs around is because there is always built-in excuses for why these particular socialist experiments always fail. And by the way, Mamdani's campaign is loaded up with those built-in excuses. First and foremost, the rent freeze. He's promising promising that he's going to direct the Rent Stabilization Board to freeze the rent in rent-stabilized apartments. Now, we all know and understand that, of course, that ends up bidding up the prices of market apartments, so it's going to make things more expensive. It also ends up leading to a bunch of people who have rent-stabilized apartments trying to pull them off the market so they don't lose money, so supply is going to be depressed. And considering Mamdani is, in fact, a left-wing NIMBY who recently, again, didn't take a position on developing Long Island City to build new apartments and instead advocated for a bigger park there where you can't build anything, this is going to be a disaster when he comes into play. But in reality, he is just going to do what is always done by the left wing, which of course is blame the developers, blame the corporate landlords, blame greed, and all that other nonsense. And of course, if the Rent Stabilization Board doesn't actually grant him his rent freeze, he's going to blame the board rather than him, saying it was completely out of his hands. In addition to that, he's promising to fund a bunch of government programs with tax increases that the mayor of New York City and the city council do not have the power to implement. You can't actually raise the top marginal tax rate in the city of New York without state approval. You can't actually raise the state corporate tax as the mayor of the city of New York, and those are the two funding mechanisms that Mamdani is pushing in order to finance his agenda. So when he doesn't get them, guess what? He is going to blame Governor Hochul and the New York State Legislature, which is always the game that the New York City mayor plays traditionally. In addition to that, I will also point out the only thing that will actually stick to Mamdani, the only thing that can actually bring him down if he is to win the mayorship, is if crime goes up in the city of New York, if quality of life ends up getting worse, because no matter what these politicians try to do, people intuitively understand that crime is under the purview of the NYPD, which is an agency controlled by the city of New York. So in order for Mamdani to be viewed as a failure, he's not going to be viewed based on any of his socialist policies in that way, because he has built-in excuses to avoid that. He only is going to be viewed as a failure if crime runs rampant due to his defund the police agenda. And guess what? He's barely being attacked on that, even though right now he's still running on it. We talked about this multiple times, but the guy wants to freeze overtime, stop hiring to bolster the ranks of the NYPD back to normal recruiting levels, and then start a new agency like the Department of Community Services or whatever, Department of Public Safety, which is a bunch of social workers that they're going to deploy instead of police officers. This is just defund the police without saying the slogan defund the police, and this is the only thing that will be used to undercut Mamdani.
You're worried about the cost of rent, groceries, kids' education. Mamdani says he is too. But what is his political activism focused on? Defunding and disarming the police, closing jails, and decriminalizing drug dealers. And as for affordability, he promises government-run grocery stores, free buses, and scavenger hunts, paid for by hiking your taxes. It would be funny if it wasn't so serious. Paid for by Fix the City.
Now, to be clear, I'm a very cynical guy, so I'm telling you what I think is likely going to happen, but that is based on my negative perception of how people react to failures of left-wing candidates, which is backed up by over 100 years of socialist experiments turning out to be disasters, only for them to be pushed again, as we'll get it right the next time. But yeah, it seems like Mamdani likely will win the mayorship. That being said, if you are in the city of New York and you haven't voted yet, go out. It's on election day. Let's get it done. And while I actively despise Andrew Cuomo, electing an Islamist socialist is by far and away significantly worse. So in my opinion, if you're somebody like me who is prone to vote for Curtis Lewa, even though I don't want to tell anybody to vote for Andrew Cuomo, this would be the best chance of getting rid of Zoran Mamdani and basically destroying his political career right now in this moment. But you know what? Those are just my thoughts. I want to know what you guys think down in the comments below. As per usual, if you like the video, show them by leaving a like, subscribe for more content, follow me on the social media, support me via support links in the description of this video. This has been me talking about the disaster that is looming for the New York City mayoral election. Till next time.